wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag, squinting at the ancient fusion engine that had been giving him trouble for the past 3 hours. The repair bay on Station Omega-7 was cramped, filled with the constant hum of recycled air and the occasional spark from welding torches. As the only human mechanic on this remote frontier station, had grown accustomed to working alone, fixing everything from mining equipment to civilian transports that limped in from the outer rim. The engine before him belonged to a cargo hauler, its crystalline components glowing with an eerie blue light that most species found beautiful. Just found it annoying. The light made it harder to see the actual mechanical problems. He'd been working on alien technology for 15 years now, ever since he'd left Earth to find work among the stars. What had started as a temporary job to pay off student loans had become a permanent exile from his home world. Another day, another impossible repair, he muttered, reaching for a plasma spanner designed for physiology. His human hands were too large for most alien tools, but he'd learned to adapt. That was what humans did best, according to the other species, adapt to anything, anywhere, no matter how uncomfortable or dangerous. The station's PA system crackled to life, announcing the arrival of another ship requesting emergency repairs. Sighed, knowing his quiet afternoon was about to become significantly more complicated. The bay doors opened with a grinding mechanical protest, revealing a small scout vessel that looked like it had been through a meteor storm. Scorch marks covered the hull, and one of the stabilizer fins was completely missing. As the ship settled onto the landing pad with concerning thuds and grinding noises, noticed something odd about the design. It wasn't any configuration he recognized from the major spacefaring species. The hull had an organic quality to it, with flowing lines that reminded him more of bones than manufactured metal. Strange symbols were etched along the sides, glowing faintly with internal energy. The airlock cycled open, and expected to see another frustrated alien captain demanding immediate repairs. Instead, a figure emerged that made him take a step back in surprise. The being was tall and elegant, with pale, almost translucent skin that seemed to shimmer in the bay's harsh lighting. What truly caught attention were the wings, massive, membranous structures that folded against the creature's back like a living cloak. The alien moved with obvious pain, favoring one side heavily. As it turned, could see that the left wing was damaged, several tears running through the delicate membrane. Dark fluid, presumably blood, dripped slowly onto the station's metal floor. "I require assistance," the being said in accented but clear standard. Its voice carried an odd harmonic quality, like multiple tones layered together. "My vessel has suffered critical damage, and I—" The alien swayed, catching itself against the ship's hull. Dropped his tools and hurried forward, his natural instinct to help overriding his surprise at encountering a completely unknown species. "Easy there, friend. Let me take a look." He gestured toward a nearby workbench. "Can you make it over there?" The alien nodded gratefully, allowing to support its weight as they moved across the bay. Up close, could see that the creature's skin wasn't just pale. It was actually white, with a subtle pearl-like quality that reflected the bay's lights in rainbow patterns. Its eyes were large and multifaceted, like cut gems, and completely colorless. "I am of the alien said as helped it sit on the workbench. "My ship was attacked by raiders 3 systems away. I managed to escape, but the damage—" It gestured weakly at its injured wing. Had never heard of but that wasn't unusual. The galaxy was vast, and new species were discovered regularly on the frontier. What concerned him more was the extent of the wing damage. Several of the larger membrane sections were torn completely through, and what looked like a bone structure was clearly fractured. He said, grabbing his emergency medical kit. "I'm not a doctor, but I've patched up plenty of beings over the years. Let me see what I can do about that wing." His multifaceted eyes widened. "You would help me, but I have nothing to offer in payment. The raiders took everything of value." Shrugged, already examining the damaged wing membrane. "Payment can wait. Right now, you need medical attention." He pulled out a tissue regenerator, one of the few pieces of advanced medical equipment the station maintained. This might sting a bit. As he worked on the wing, carefully sealing the membrane tears and setting a temporary brace around the fractured bone, found himself genuinely curious about his patient. His physiology was unlike anything he'd encountered before. The wing structure was incredibly complex, with multiple layers of muscle and membrane that seemed to operate on principles he didn't fully understand. "Your people don't often venture into this sector," observed, applying synthetic skin to cover the larger wounds. "They aren't in any of the standard databases." Was quiet for a long moment. "My people are cautious about contact with other species. We prefer to remain in our own territories. I was on a diplomatic mission when the raiders struck." Something in the alien's tone suggested there was more to the story, but didn't press. He'd learned that frontier space attracted all kinds of beings, many of whom had reasons for avoiding too many questions about their past or their business. "Well, this should hold for now," said, stepping back to examine his work. The wing still looked fragile, but the immediate bleeding had stopped, and the membrane tears were sealed. "You'll need proper medical attention from someone who understands your physiology better than I do, but this should get you back into space." Flexed the wing carefully, testing's repairs. A look of relief crossed its exotic features. "The pain is much less. You have done excellent work." It paused, studying with those strange, colorless eyes. "Why did you help me? Your species has no treaties with mine. You gain nothing from this kindness." Packed away his medical supplies, considering the question. "Maybe that's just what humans do. We help when we can." He moved toward the damaged scout ship. "Now let's see about getting your transport functional again." The ship's problems were extensive, but not insurmountable. The hull breaches were easily patched with standard repair foam and was able to fabricate replacement parts for the damaged stabilizer using the station's manufacturing bay. The real challenge was the propulsion system, which operated on principles that were completely foreign to him. "Your technology is fascinating," he said, studying the organic-looking components that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. "How does this work exactly?" Had been resting while worked, but now it approached the open engine compartment. "It is difficult to explain in standard. The components are grown rather than manufactured, and they respond to bioelectric impulses." It hesitated. "Few outside my people understand the principles involved." Nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I don't need to understand it to fix it. Let me just trace these connections and see where the damage is." He spent the next several hours carefully following the ship's systems, identifying damaged components and finding ways to repair or bypass them. The work was challenging in a way that found deeply satisfying. Too often, his repairs involved standard replacements of common parts. This ship required creative solutions and careful improvisation. By the time he finished, the sun analog that lit this system had completed its cycle, and the station's artificial night cycle was beginning. "Try it now," called from beneath the ship, where he was making final adjustments to the power distribution network. The engine hummed to life with a sound unlike anything had heard before, a deep, harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. All the ship systems came online smoothly, displaying readouts in the flowing script he'd noticed on the hull. His relief was obvious. "Incredible, you have accomplished in hours what I feared would require returning to my." It turned to face, its expression serious. "I am deeply in your debt of Earth." "Don't worry about it," said, cleaning his hands again. "Just glad I could help. Where are you headed from here?" "I must complete my mission," said quietly. "There are complications in my people's territory that require diplomatic resolution. But first I must ask, is there anything I can do to repay your kindness? Any knowledge or assistance you require?" Considered this. He was genuinely curious about people and their unusual technology, but he sensed that asking too many questions might not be welcome. "Just be safe out there. Space is dangerous enough without raiders making it worse." Nodded solemnly. "Your wisdom matches your skill. I will not forget this debt." It paused at the ship's airlock. "Perhaps our paths will cross again under more favorable circumstances." "Maybe they will," agreed, though privately he doubted it. The galaxy was vast, and chance encounters were rarely repeated. He watched as the strange, organic ship lifted gracefully from the landing bay, its repaired systems functioning smoothly. Within moments, it had disappeared into the star field beyond the station, leaving alone with his thoughts and the lingering questions about the mysterious. The next morning brought a return to routine. More ships arrived with standard problems: overheated cooling systems, worn engine components, navigation computer glitches. Threw himself into his work, but he found his mind occasionally drifting to the unusual encounter. Something about it felt significant, though he couldn't explain why. Days turned into weeks, and the alien encounter became just another story in his collection of frontier experiences. The repair bay continued its steady rhythm of broken ships and grateful customers. Its reputation for fixing the unfixable continued to grow, attracting clients from increasingly distant systems. One evening, as was closing down the bay for his rest cycle, Station Commander Reeves appeared at his workshop door. The older human looked troubled, carrying a data pad with official seals from the Galactic Trade Commission. "We need to talk," Reeves said, settling his bulk into a spare chair. "I just received some interesting intelligence from Sector Command." Oh, continued organizing his tools, only half listening. Reeves was known for his dramatic announcements about bureaucratic matters that rarely affected day-to-day station operations. "There's been unusual activity in the Nebula region, ships going missing, entire colonies losing contact with the outside galaxy." Reeves tapped his data pad. "The Trade Commission is organizing a task force to investigate, but they're having trouble with the local species." Paused in his cleanup. The nebula was roughly in the direction had departed, though space was three-dimensional and distances were deceptive. "What kind of trouble?" "Cultural conflicts, mostly. The dominant species in that region are apparently very xenophobic. They've been refusing all diplomatic contact and turning away any ships that enter their space." Reeves leaned forward. "But here's the interesting part. Intelligence suggests they might be facing some kind of internal crisis. Civil war, maybe, or invasion from outside their territory." "And this affects us how?" asked, though he was beginning to suspect where this conversation was leading. "The Commission wants to establish a diplomatic presence in the region, figure out what's happening, and whether it represents a threat to trade routes." Reeves studied carefully. "They're looking for specialists who might be able to make contact where others have failed, people with experience dealing with unusual alien species and technology." Set down the wrench he'd been cleaning. "Commander, I'm a mechanic, not a diplomat." "Maybe so, but you're also the only human I know who can fix alien technology he's never seen before. You have a gift for understanding how other species think and work." Reeves stood, leaving the data pad on his workbench. "The Commission is offering substantial compensation for the right candidate, enough to buy your own station if that's what you want." After Reeves left, sat alone in his workshop, staring at the official documents. The opportunity was tempting. He'd been saving for years toward eventual ownership of his own repair facility. But something about the timing felt significant. Had mentioned complications in his people's territory requiring diplomatic resolution. Could the mysterious be connected to the troubles in the nebula? Made his decision that night. Within a week, he'd arranged for a temporary replacement and booked passage on a fast courier ship bound for the nebula region. The journey took 12 standard days through a series of jump gates, each transition bringing him closer to one of the galaxy's more unstable political regions. The nebula itself was breathtaking, vast clouds of ionized gas that glowed in brilliant purples and golds, lit from within by young stars still forming from the cosmic dust. But the beauty was deceptive. The nebula's electromagnetic properties made long-range communication difficult, and the gravitational anomalies created by forming star systems made navigation treacherous. Its destination was Haven Station, a fortified outpost that served as the Commission's forward base for this region. The station was larger than Omega-7, but had a distinctly military atmosphere, with armed security checkpoints and constant patrol flights of fighter craft. Commissioner Sarah met in the station's briefing room, spreading holographic star charts across the conference table. She was a severe woman with graying hair and the precise manner of someone accustomed to dealing with galactic-level politics. "Mister, thank you for coming," she began without preamble. "I've reviewed your service record and the recommendations from Station Commander Reeves. Your technical skills and cultural adaptability make you uniquely qualified for this assignment." The holographic display showed the nebula region divided into color-coded territorial zones. Most of the space was marked in red, indicating restricted or hostile areas. "The situation has deteriorated significantly since we first identified the problem," continued. "3 more colonies have gone silent, and we've lost contact with 2 of our diplomatic missions." Studied the star chart, noting the patterns of missing colonies and failed diplomatic attempts. "What do we know about the dominant species?" "Very little, unfortunately. They call themselves and they control approximately 60% of the habitable systems in this region." Highlighted several star systems in blue. Initial contact was made about 5 years ago through trade intermediaries, but they've never allowed direct diplomatic relations with the galactic community. Felt a chill of recognition. Are you certain of the name? Absolutely. Why have you encountered them before? His expression sharpened with interest. Hesitated, wondering how much to reveal about his encounter with. I may have had some contact with one of their people, briefly. He decided to keep the details vague for now. What exactly is my role supposed to be? We need someone who can make contact with leadership and determine what's causing the current crisis. Our intelligence suggests they're facing a significant internal threat, possibly invasion from an unknown hostile force. Manipulated the display, showing recent sensor readings from the edge of space. These energy signatures don't match any known technology. The mission briefing continued for several hours, covering everything from communication protocols to emergency evacuation procedures. Would be traveling aboard a specially modified diplomatic vessel equipped with translation matrices and cultural databases. His primary objective was to establish communication and offer assistance, if appropriate. That night, alone in his assigned quarters, reviewed everything he could find about the Commission's databases. The information was frustratingly limited, mostly second-hand reports from traders and a few long-range sensor sweeps. The species was described as highly advanced but reclusive, with technology that appeared to blend organic and mechanical principles. One detail caught his attention. Several reports mentioned that individuals varied significantly in appearance, with some displaying what observers described as crystalline or ethereal characteristics. Could unusual albino appearance be related to some kind of genetic or social variation within his species? The diplomatic vessel Harmony launched the following morning, its small crew consisting of a communications specialist named Dr. and Captain Jake, a veteran of first contact missions. The ship was designed for peaceful encounter, with minimal weapons and extensive sensor arrays for gathering cultural and technical data. As they approached the boundary of space, their communications array picked up increasing amounts of encrypted transmissions. The traffic patterns suggested significant military activity, but the encryption was beyond their ability to decode. Captain followed established protocols, broadcasting friendship messages on multiple frequencies while maintaining a respectful distance from territorial boundaries. The response, when it came, was swift and unambiguous. 3 patrol ships appeared from behind a small asteroid, their organic hulls bristling with what were obviously weapon systems. The lead ship transmitted a warning in heavily accented standard. Unknown vessel, you are approaching restricted space. State your business or withdraw immediately. Doctor took the lead, activating the ship's diplomatic transponders and broadcasting their credentials. This is the diplomatic vessel Harmony, representing the Galactic Trade Commission. We request permission to speak with authorities regarding mutual concerns about regional stability. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Watched the tactical display, noting how the patrol ships had positioned themselves to cover all possible escape routes. These beings were clearly experienced in space combat, despite their apparent isolation from the galactic community. Finally, the lead ship responded. You will follow designated approach vector to verification station Tau 7. Any deviation will be considered hostile action. The verification station turned out to be a massive orbital platform surrounding a small moon. Its architecture was distinctly organic, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with internal light. Docking was accomplished through a series of extending mechanical appendages that gently grasped the Harmony and guided it into a receiving bay. The reception committee that met them was small but impressive. 3 in elaborate ceremonial armor waited at the airlock, their wings folded formally against their backs. Immediately noticed the variations Doctor had mentioned. One guard had golden skin and amber wings, while another displayed deep purple coloration with silver highlights. I am Wing Commander, the golden-skinned leader announced. You will accompany me for security verification before any further contact is authorized. The verification process was thorough but polite. Each member of the diplomatic team was scanned by devices that seemed to map their biological and technological characteristics. Submitted to the process calmly, though he noticed paying particular attention to his readings. Human technology specialist, mused, reviewing scan results. Your species has a reputation for adaptability and creative problem-solving. He paused, studying more closely. Have you had previous contact with our people? Decided honesty was the best approach. I once assisted an individual who was in distress, ship repairs and medical attention, nothing more. His multifaceted eyes widened slightly. Describe this individual. Tall, pale, almost white skin and wings. Called himself. Said he was on a diplomatic mission when raiders attacked his ship. The effect of this revelation was immediate and dramatic. All three guards exchanged rapid communication in their native language, a complex series of harmonic tones that the translation matrix couldn't interpret, turned back to with an expression of unmistakable surprise. Of the White Wing, he spoke the name with what sounded like reverence. You aided the heir apparent in his time of need. Blinked in shock. Heir apparent? The injured alien he'd helped was royalty. I didn't know his rank, he just needed help, so I helped. Stepped back and performed what was obviously a formal salute, his wings spreading wide in a gesture of respect. The other guards immediately followed suit. Of Earth, said formally, you are honored among our people. Returned safely and reported your assistance to the High Council. Your name is recorded in the Chronicles of Debt. The entire atmosphere of the encounter had shifted. Instead of suspicious interrogation, found himself being escorted through the station with ceremonial honors. Others stopped their work to observe the procession, many performing the wingspread salute as he passed. I don't understand, said as they traveled through corridors lined with flowing organic artwork. I just did some basic repairs. Anyone would have done the same. You are wrong, replied seriously. Many would have demanded payment or sought advantage from helping royalty. Some might have turned the heir over to those who meant him harm. He gestured to the elaborate decorations surrounding them. Honor is not given lightly among our people of Earth. You have earned a debt that our entire race acknowledges. They arrived at a communication chamber where a massive holographic projector dominated the center of the room. As activated the device, a three-dimensional image resolved into the familiar features of, though now he wore elaborate ceremonial garments that marked his royal status. This image said warmly, "It is good to see you again. I regret that our reunion comes during such dark times." Stared at the holographic projection of, still processing the revelation that the injured alien he'd helped was actually royalty. The heir looked older somehow, though couldn't pinpoint exactly what had changed. There was a weariness in those multifaceted eyes that hadn't been present during their first meeting. Your Highness, began awkwardly, unsure of proper protocol. Raised a pale hand, his expression softening. Please, you saved my life without knowing my rank or expecting reward. Between us, such formalities are unnecessary. The hologram flickered slightly as communication arrays adjusted for the vast distance between them. Though I must apologize for the circumstances that bring you to our territory. Wing Commander stepped forward. Heir apparent, the human's diplomatic mission seeks information about our current crisis. Should I authorize full disclosure? More than authorize, it is necessary, replied gravely. Your timing is either incredibly fortunate or guided by forces beyond our understanding. The complications I mentioned during our first meeting have escalated into something far more dangerous than internal political disputes. The holographic display expanded, showing a three-dimensional map of space. Large portions were marked in ominous red, indicating areas under siege or completely lost to enemy control. Counted at least a dozen star systems marked as compromised. 3 months ago, an unknown force began systematic attacks on our outer colonies, continued. Initially, we assumed it was raiders or pirates taking advantage of our isolation. But the pattern of attacks, the advanced technology employed, and the complete disappearance of entire populations suggested something far more sinister. Manipulated the display controls, zooming in on sensor readings from the most recent attacks. They strike without warning, disable our defenses with weapons we cannot understand, and take everything, ships, technology, and our people. No demands for ransom, no territorial negotiations, complete systematic harvesting. Studied the tactical data, noting the precision and efficiency of the attacks. Whatever force was responsible had clearly studied defensive capabilities and developed specific countermeasures. Have you been able to recover any of their technology, captured ships or weapons? That is part of the problem, said. They leave nothing behind. No wreckage, no evidence of their presence except the absence of everything that was there before. Our best military analysts believe they may be using some form of matter conversion technology. Doctor stepped forward from where she'd been quietly recording the conversation. Your Highness, the Galactic Trade Commission has resources that might be helpful. Sensor networks, military assets, technical specialists. Why haven't your people requested assistance before now? Was quiet for a long moment, his pale features troubled. Because we fear the cure may be worse than the disease. Our people have maintained isolation for good reasons, Doctor. We possess technologies and knowledge that could be problematic if they fell into the wrong hands. What kind of technologies? Asked, remembering the organic ship systems he'd repaired, and exchanged glances before the heir apparent nodded slowly. Our civilization developed along different paths than most galactic species. Where others pursued mechanical engineering and artificial intelligence, we learned to blend biological and technological principles. Our ships, weapons, and infrastructure are as much grown as manufactured. The implications were staggering. Had suspected the technology was unusual, but a complete biotechnological civilization represented advances that could revolutionize galactic society, or destabilize it completely if misused. The unknown attackers seem particularly interested in our biotechnological facilities, continued. They've specifically targeted research installations and manufacturing centers where our most advanced systems are developed. We believe they're not just raiding, they're harvesting our knowledge. Captain spoke for the first time since entering the communication chamber. Your Highness, with respect, this sounds like a problem that requires immediate galactic intervention. Whatever force is attacking you has capabilities that threaten all inhabited systems. Precisely our fear, replied. If we reveal our full technological capabilities to defend against this threat, we risk exposing knowledge that could be misused by other species. But if we continue fighting alone, we will inevitably lose, and that same knowledge will fall into the hands of our attackers. Found himself thinking about the problem from an engineer's perspective. What if there was a middle ground? Limited cooperation focused specifically on the threat, without revealing your core technologies. We have considered this approach, interjected. But our previous experiences with galactic politics suggest that any cooperation inevitably leads to demands for greater disclosure. Not necessarily, Doctor said thoughtfully. The Commission has protocols for working with species that have sensitive technologies, protected observer status, limited technical exchanges, graduated cooperation agreements. Leaned forward in the projection, his expression hopeful for the first time since the conversation began. You understand our technology better than any outsider we've encountered. Could such an arrangement be workable? Considered this carefully. His brief experience repairing ship had demonstrated that human engineering principles could interface with biotechnology, but he'd only scratched the surface of their capabilities. It might work, but I'd need to understand more about what you're facing. Could I examine some of the evidence from the attacks? That can be arranged, said. There is a forward observation post in the Helix sector where our forces are attempting to track enemy movements. If you're willing to take the risk, I can arrange transport. The journey to the observation post took 6 hours through jump space that had been carefully mapped by navigators. Traveled aboard a military escort vessel, its biotechnological systems humming with quiet efficiency that still amazed him. The ship's living hull adjusted automatically to gravitational stresses, and the navigation system seemed to anticipate course corrections before they were needed. Commander Ra, the observation post's leader, was a veteran military officer whose dark green coloration and battle-scarred wings spoke of long experience in combat. She greeted with respectful courtesy, though her skepticism about human involvement in affairs was obvious. Wing Commander has explained your status, she said as she led through the post's command center. But understand that what I'm about to show you represents classified strategic information. Lives depend on maintaining operational security. The command center was a marvel of biotechnological engineering. Living displays showed real-time sensor data from across the sector, with information flowing through organic conduits that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Technicians interfaced directly with the systems through neural connections that allowed them to process data at inhuman speeds. Here, Ross said, activating a holographic replay of the most recent attack. The enemy struck Outpost Gamma 9 4 days ago. Watched in fascination and horror as the recording showed a defensive position being systematically dismantled. The attacking ships were unlike anything in his experience, geometric forms that seemed to phase in and out of normal space, weapons that dissolved matter rather than destroying it conventionally. Notice the precision, Ra pointed out. They target specific systems in an exact sequence designed to disable our responses without causing unnecessary damage to what they want to capture. They're definitely after your technology, agreed, studying the tactical patterns. But there's something else. Look at the way they approach each target. He indicated several points in the recording where enemy ships had avoided apparently vulnerable positions. They're not just efficient, they know exactly what to expect from your defenses. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Commander Ra's wings twitched with barely controlled anger. You're suggesting they have inside knowledge of our capabilities. I'm suggesting they've studied you very thoroughly, clarified diplomatically. Either through intelligence gathering or, he paused, considering the darker possibility. Or they've captured and interrogated our people, Ra finished grimly. We've suspected this, but confirming it changes our strategic calculations significantly. Over the following hours, reviewed every piece of available evidence from the attacks. Sensor recordings, debris analysis, tactical assessments, all painting a picture of an enemy that was not only technologically advanced, but possessed detailed knowledge of society and military doctrine. Commander, said finally, I need to ask a difficult question. Have any of your people ever encountered technology that could interface directly with biological systems? Something that could access genetic information or neural patterns? Ra's expression darkened further. Why do you ask? Because everything I'm seeing suggests the enemy isn't just capturing your people. They're somehow assimilating your knowledge. The precision of their attacks, the way they avoid damaging what they want to steal, the specific targeting of biotechnological facilities. Gestured at the accumulated evidence. They're not just raiding, they're systematically acquiring everything that makes your civilization unique. The silence that followed was broken by urgent alarms throughout the command center. Technicians bent over their living displays, their neural interfaces glowing with frantic activity. Commander Ra moved quickly to the central command station. Report, she ordered. Enemy formation approaching from Vector 77 Mark IV. A technician announced. Configuration matches previous raid patterns. Estimated time to weapon range, 23 minutes. Found himself in the middle of a military crisis, watching defenders prepare for an attack with desperate efficiency. But as he observed their preparations, he noticed something troubling. Commander, he called out, your defensive positioning, it's following standard tactical doctrine, isn't it? Of course, Ra replied without looking away from her displays. Protocols developed over centuries of warfare. That's the problem, said urgently. If the enemy has been studying you, they'll know exactly what to expect. He moved to the tactical display, indicating the defensive formations. What if you did something completely unpredictable instead? Ra turned to stare at him. You want us to abandon proven tactics in the middle of an enemy approach? I want you to do something they haven't seen before, replied. Something that doesn't follow military doctrine because it isn't military doctrine. The idea was radical enough to be either brilliant or catastrophic. Quickly outlined his reasoning. If the enemy was using captured knowledge to predict responses, then unpredictable human tactical thinking might provide an advantage. 12 minutes to weapon range, the technician reported tensely. Commander Ra made her decision with the kind of quick judgment that marked experienced military leaders. All units, new tactical formation, implement random dispersal pattern Delta 7 and prepare for asymmetric engagement. What followed was unlike any space battle had ever witnessed. Ships abandoned their traditional formations, instead using chaotic movement patterns that seemed to confuse the attacking vessels. When the enemy deployed weapons designed to counter standard defensive positions, they found targets that weren't where tactical doctrine suggested they should be. The engagement lasted only 18 minutes, but it represented the first time forces had successfully repelled an attack without losing ships or personnel. As the enemy vessels felt a surge of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to fight back effectively. Impressive, Commander Ra admitted as damage reports came in. Your unconventional thinking may have given us an important tactical advantage, but was already thinking beyond individual battles. Commander, what if we could scale this up? Not just random tactics, but completely unexpected strategies that combine human adaptability with biotechnology. The idea that emerged from discussions with Ra and her staff was ambitious beyond anything previously considered. A joint task force that would blend human strategic thinking with technological capabilities, creating hybrid approaches that no enemy could anticipate through captured knowledge. It would require unprecedented cooperation between our species, Ra warned, sharing technologies and tactical information that we've never revealed to outsiders. But it might be the only way to stop them, replied. Whatever force is attacking you, they're adapting to everything you do. The only way to stay ahead is to keep evolving faster than they can learn. The communication back to was tense with urgency and possibility. The heir apparent listened carefully as and Ra outlined their proposal for joint human military operations. The risks are enormous, said finally, but so are the potential benefits. He paused, consulting with advisors outside the projection range. Your species has a reputation for unconventional solutions to impossible problems. Are you confident that human tactical doctrine could provide the advantage we need? Thought about humanity's history of warfare, adaptation, and survival against overwhelming odds. Your Highness, if there's one thing humans excel at, it's finding new ways to fight when the old ways stop working. The authorization came through within hours. Would return to commission space to present the proposal for joint operations, while Ra would prepare a detailed analysis of enemy capabilities for human military strategists to study. As prepared to depart the observation post, Commander Ra approached him privately. Human, she said formally, I owe you an apology. I doubted whether your species could contribute meaningfully to our defense. And now asked, Now I believe you may be our only hope for survival, she replied seriously. Your unconventional thinking saved lives today. Applied on a larger scale, it might save our entire civilization. The journey back to commission space was filled with urgent planning sessions. Doctor worked on diplomatic frameworks for the proposed alliance, while Captain analyzed the tactical data from the recent battle. Found himself in the unusual position of being a technical consultant on military strategy. The key is unpredictability, he explained during one planning session. The enemy's advantage comes from their ability to anticipate responses. Take away that advantage, and their superior technology becomes less decisive. Commissioner's reaction to their report was immediate and intense. Within hours of their arrival at Haven Station, high-priority communications were flowing between the frontier base and Commission headquarters on Earth. The proposal for joint human operations represented a diplomatic breakthrough that could reshape galactic politics. The Strategic Council is very interested, reported after a secure conference call with Earth. But they have concerns about the level of technology sharing required. They have similar concerns, Doctor pointed out. Both sides are being asked to trust former strangers with their most sensitive capabilities. Understood the hesitation, but he also understood the urgency of the threat. Commissioner, with respect, we may not have time for gradual confidence building. The enemy is systematic and efficient. Every day we delay gives them more opportunities to capture assets. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Intelligence analysis of the energy signatures detected during recent attacks revealed disturbing patterns that suggested the unknown enemy was not operating alone. The systematic efficiency of their attacks, combined with their detailed knowledge of multiple species technologies, indicated a coordinated effort involving several advanced civilizations. This isn't just about realized as he studied the intelligence reports. They're targeting any species with unique technological advantages. They are just the most isolated and vulnerable. The implications transformed the entire strategic situation. If the enemy was systematically harvesting advanced technologies from across the galaxy, then every species had a stake in stopping them. The alliance suddenly represented not just military cooperation, but potential survival for galactic civilization itself. Commissioner convened an emergency session of the Regional Security Council, bringing together representatives from a dozen species to review the evidence. The reaction was swift and decisive. This threat required immediate coordinated response. Found himself appointed as primary liaison between human forces and the military, a responsibility that would have terrified him a few weeks earlier. Now, with the stakes clearly understood, he focused on the technical challenges of blending two completely different military traditions. The first joint operation was planned for the Helix sector, where forces would bait an enemy attack while human ships provided unpredictable tactical support. The coordination required unprecedented real-time communication between species that had never worked together before. "Remember," told the human squadron commanders during their final briefing, "you're not just fighting alongside, you're fighting as extensions of their capabilities. Your job is to be the unpredictable element that breaks enemy tactical assumptions." As the Joint Task Force departed for the Helix sector, realized that success or failure would determine not just the fate of but possibly the future of independent civilization in this part of the galaxy. The unknown enemy had made a critical error in targeting the most adaptable species in known space. At the same time, they threatened his newfound allies. The battle that awaited them would test whether human adaptability and biotechnology could overcome an enemy that seemed to have answers for everything. But for the first time since learning about the threat, felt genuinely optimistic about their chances. After all, there was nothing more human than turning impossible odds into unexpected victory through sheer stubborn creativity. And there was nothing more likely to surprise an enemy than a species that specialized in doing things that weren't supposed to work. The Joint Task Force assembled in the outer reaches of the Helix sector represented the most unusual military cooperation in galactic history. 15 human vessels worked alongside 23 ships, their crews learning to coordinate technologies and tactics that had never been designed to work together. Floated between the command centers of both fleets, serving as translator not just for languages, but for entirely different approaches to warfare. Admiral Sarah, commander of the human contingent, was a veteran of border conflicts who had earned her reputation fighting pirates in the Outer Rim. Her tactical philosophy emphasized speed, adaptability, and aggressive use of limited resources. "The key to fighting a superior enemy," she explained to the Joint Staff, "is making sure they never fight the battle they prepared for." Wing Marshal, leading the forces, represented centuries of military tradition focused on coordinated biological systems and long-term strategic planning. His biotechnological ships could literally adapt their configurations during battle, but required time and careful orchestration to reach maximum effectiveness. "The challenge," observed during the final planning session, "is making sure our strengths complement each other instead of canceling out." The operation plan was elegantly simple in concept, nightmarishly complex in execution. Forces would establish defensive positions around a captured research facility that enemy forces had been systematically looting. When the next raid arrived, intelligence suggested within 48 hours, human ships would provide tactical surprise while vessels used their technological advantages to contain and capture enemy forces. The first surprise came 12 hours early. Enemy vessels appeared at the edge of the system without warning, their phase-shifting technology allowing them to bypass most conventional sensor networks. Only the living sensor arrays of ships detected their approach in time to implement defensive measures. "All units, enemy contact at Vector 91 Mark 7, Wing Marshal announced across the Joint Communication Network. "Configuration suggests assault-class raiders, estimated strength 15 vessels." Admiral studied the tactical displays from her command ship, noting the precise formation and approach vector. "They're following the same pattern as previous attacks," she observed. "Systematic, predictable, designed to overwhelm standard defenses." Monitoring communications from the Joint Coordination Center, watched as both fleets began implementing their carefully rehearsed plans. Ships assumed defensive positions that appeared to follow standard doctrine, while human vessels remained hidden behind asteroid fields and debris clouds. The enemy approached with mechanical precision, their weapons charging in sequence as they closed to engagement range. Their formation was perfect for countering traditional tactics, and completely wrong for what actually awaited them. "Human squadrons, initiate random intervention pattern 7, Admiral ordered as enemy ships committed to their attack approach. What followed challenged every conventional understanding of space combat tactics. Human ships emerged from concealment at seemingly random points, attacking with weapons systems the enemy had never encountered and movement patterns that logical prediction. Simultaneously, vessels abandoned their apparent defensive formations to implement adaptive strategies that constantly shifted in response to enemy actions. The result was chaos, but controlled chaos that favored the defending forces. Enemy ships found themselves engaging targets that weren't where they were supposed to be, using tactics that hadn't appeared in any previous engagement. Watch the battle unfold on tactical displays that showed the beautiful complexity of biotechnological and mechanical systems working in unprecedented harmony. Human ships darted between enemy formations like aggressive insects, disrupting coordinated attacks while vessels adapted their configurations to exploit the confusion. Enemy flagship attempting to withdraw, reported Commander Torres from the human destroyer Relentless. Should we pursue? Negative, Admiral replied quickly. Let them escape. We want them to report what they've seen. It was a calculated decision based on strategic insight. If the enemy relied on captured intelligence to plan their attacks, then feeding them confusing information about joint human capabilities would disrupt their future operations. The engagement lasted only 27 minutes, but its aftermath would reshape the balance of power in this sector of space. For the first time since the unknown raids began, an enemy force had been not just repelled, but decisively defeated with minimal losses to defending forces. Remarkable, Wing Marshal commented as damage reports came in. We achieved tactical objectives I would have considered impossible against an enemy of this capability, but was already thinking beyond individual victories. Marshal, Admiral, this was just the beginning. The enemy will adapt to what they learned here. We need to stay ahead of their learning curve. The next phase of operations involved something far more ambitious than single battles. Intelligence gathered from the engagement had revealed disturbing evidence about the scope of enemy activities. They weren't just raiding individual systems, they were systematically mapping and the technological capabilities of every species they encountered. It's not random piracy, Doctor explained during the post-battle analysis. They're building a comprehensive database of galactic military and technological assets. The question is why? The answer came from an unexpected source. Among the debris recovered from destroyed enemy ships, biotechnological analysis revealed traces of technologies from 17 different species, including several that had been considered extinct for decades. They're not just harvesting current technology, realized with growing horror. They're systematically collecting everything unique or advanced from across the galaxy, building some kind of ultimate technological synthesis. Wing Marshal's expression was grim as he reviewed the analysis. If they succeed in combining the best technologies from multiple civilizations, they would become effectively unstoppable. The strategic situation had suddenly become far more urgent. This wasn't just about protecting territory. It was about preventing the emergence of a technological empire that could dominate the entire galaxy. Every day the enemy continued their operations brought them closer to achieving overwhelming superiority. Admiral convened emergency sessions with fleet commanders from across the region. The response was swift and determined. Multiple species would contribute forces to an expanded joint operation designed to locate and neutralize the enemy's main operational base. Found himself appointed as Chief Technical Advisor for the Multi-Species Task Force, a role that required him to understand and coordinate technologies from civilizations he'd never heard of a month earlier. The challenge was fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. The search for the enemy base required detective work on a galactic scale. Analysis of attack patterns, resource requirements, and technological evidence gradually revealed the most likely location, a rogue planet in the void between star systems, perfectly positioned to launch raids across multiple sectors while remaining hidden from conventional searches. It's brilliant, Admiral admitted as the task force assembled for the final assault. Isolated, defendable with access to multiple target regions, they could operate from there indefinitely. The joint fleet that departed for the rogue planet represented the largest multi-species military cooperation in recorded history. Human ships provided tactical unpredictability and adaptive strategies. Vessels contributed biotechnological advantages and defensive capabilities. A dozen other species added their own unique strengths to the coalition. Coordinated from the Joint Command Ship, working with a staff that included beings he couldn't have imagined 6 months earlier. The technical challenges of coordinating so many different military traditions would have been insurmountable without the biotechnological communication systems that allowed real-time translation and coordination. The rogue planet, when they finally located it, exceeded their worst fears. Massive orbital installations surrounded a world that had been completely transformed into a technological harvesting and analysis facility. Captured ships from dozens of species were being systematically dismantled and studied, while manufacturing complexes produced hybrid technologies that combined the best features of multiple civilizations. "They're not just stealing technology," Doctor observed as the fleet conducted long-range reconnaissance. "They're perfecting it, taking the best ideas from every species and eliminating the weaknesses." The enemy response to their arrival was immediate and overwhelming. Defensive platforms that incorporated weapons from multiple civilizations opened fire with devastating efficiency, while ships that combined the best features of various species' designs moved to intercept the approaching fleet. But the Joint Task Force had advantages the enemy hadn't anticipated. Where previous engagements had involved single species with predictable tactics, the multi-species coalition brought together strategic approaches that had never been combined before. Human ships used their adaptability to exploit momentary weaknesses in enemy formations. Vessels provided biotechnological support that enhanced the capabilities of allied ships. Other species contributed everything from advanced shielding technologies to exotic weapons systems that the enemy had never encountered in combination. The battle for the rogue planet lasted 18 hours and involved more ships than any engagement in galactic history. Coordinated from the command center, watching as tactics and technologies evolved in real time as both sides adapted to their opponent's strategies. The turning point came when realized that the enemy's greatest strength, their ability to incorporate captured technologies, could also be their greatest weakness. "Admiral," he called to during a brief lull in the fighting, "what if we deliberately fed them conflicting information?" The strategy that emerged was risky, but brilliant. Coalition forces began implementing tactics that appeared to be standard doctrines for their respective species, but contained subtle modifications designed to mislead enemy adaptive systems. When the enemy's captured intelligence suggested specific countermeasures, they found themselves facing attacks that weren't quite what their databases predicted. "It's working," Wing Marshal reported as enemy defensive formations began showing signs of confusion. "Their tactical responses are becoming increasingly erratic." The final assault on the main installation required everything the coalition could bring to bear. As watched the coordinated attack unfold, he reflected on how far he'd come from repairing ships in a frontier station. The injured alien he'd helped months ago had led him to a role in the most significant military operation in galactic history. The enemy's main facility was a technological marvel that represented centuries of accumulated knowledge from across the galaxy. But it was also a monument to theft and systematic destruction of peaceful civilizations. As coalition forces fought their way through defensive systems that incorporated the best weapons technologies ever developed, felt a deep satisfaction in helping to end this threat. The campaign concluded with the complete destruction of the enemy's operational capability and the liberation of thousands of captured beings from dozens of species. Analysis of recovered records revealed the scope of their activities: systematic raids across 3 galactic arms, targeting any civilization with unique technological advantages. "They came closer to succeeding than anyone realizes," Admiral reported to the assembled fleet commanders. "Another year of operations, and they would have had enough technological synthesis to dominate any individual species." But perhaps more important than the military victory was the precedent established by successful multi-species cooperation. The Joint Task Force had demonstrated that different civilizations could work together effectively when faced with common threats. Wing Marshal approached as the fleet prepared to return to their respective territories. "Human," he said formally, "your species has earned the eternal gratitude of but more than that, you have shown us the value of cooperation with other civilizations." "And we've learned that isolation isn't always the safest option," replied. "Sometimes you need allies to survive." The journey back to space was triumphant, but also reflective. Found himself in conversations with beings from across the galaxy, discussing not just the recent campaign, but the possibilities for future cooperation. The successful military alliance had created diplomatic opportunities that could reshape galactic politics for generations. Was waiting when arrived at the royal capital, his pale features bright with joy and relief. "My friend," the heir apparent said warmly, "you have exceeded even our highest hopes. The debt our people owe you can never be fully repaid." "I don't think of it as a debt," replied honestly. "I think of it as friendship, and friends help each other when they can." The formal ceremonies honoring the coalition forces lasted for days, but found the private moments most meaningful. Conversations with scientists about technological cooperation, discussions with military leaders about future joint training programs, and quiet talks with about the broader implications of what they'd accomplished. "Your species has a gift," observed during one such conversation, "not just for engineering or tactics, but for bringing out the best in other civilizations. The coalition succeeded because humans showed everyone how to work together." When it came time to return to commissioned space, faced a choice he hadn't expected. Admiral offered him a permanent position as technical liaison for multi-species operations, while Commissioner suggested he establish a permanent diplomatic presence in territory. But ultimately chose to return to Omega-7, though with new responsibilities and resources. The repair station would become a hub for technological cooperation between species, a place where beings could work together on projects that benefited everyone. The first collaborative workshop opened 6 months later, bringing together engineers and scientists from across the galaxy to share knowledge and develop joint solutions to common problems. The organic ships that had once seemed so alien to now shared docking space with human vessels and craft from a dozen other species. Doctor visited during the facility's first anniversary celebration, marveling at the transformation. Who would have thought that helping one injured alien would lead to all this? Looked out at the bustling station, watching human technicians working alongside biotechnological specialists and engineers from species he was still learning about. "Maybe that's the real point," he said thoughtfully. "You never know where small acts of kindness will lead. Sometimes they save one life, sometimes they change the galaxy." Wing Commander, now serving as the representative to the Cooperation Council, approached with his characteristic formal dignity. "Of Earth," he said, performing the traditional wing-spread salute, "the White Wing sends his greetings and an invitation to visit for the Festival of New Bonds." "Tell I'd be honored to attend," replied, returning the salute as best he could with human anatomy. "But only if he promises not to make it too formal. I'm still just a mechanic who likes fixing things." "A mechanic who helped save galactic civilization," corrected with what might have been humor. "Though I suspect you will always see yourself as simply someone who helps when help is needed." As the celebration continued around them, reflected on the strange path that had brought him here. A routine repair job on an isolated station had led to friendship with alien royalty, military alliance between species, and ultimately the establishment of ongoing cooperation that would benefit the galaxy for generations. But at its heart, it had all started with one simple human principle: when someone needs help, you help them. Everything else had grown from that single act of basic decency. The repair bay on Omega-7 still hummed with the sounds of working machinery, but now it hummed in harmony with technologies from across the galaxy. And sometimes, late at night when the station was quiet, would work on some particularly challenging repair and remember the injured alien who had changed his life by allowing him to do what humans do best: adapt, improvise, and help others succeed. In the end, that was the real human advantage, not superior technology or military prowess, but the simple willingness to extend a helping hand to anyone who needed it, regardless of species, politics, or personal gain. It was a lesson the galaxy was still learning, but one that promised to make the future brighter for everyone.